My brother didn't just refuse my handshake in that boardroom. He made sure everyone watched him do it. He looked at my hand like it carried shame, then told me, "People like you don't belong here." And before 12 silent executives, my own brother called me filthy trash because I was black. What he didn't know was simple. I wasn't there begging to be accepted by my family. I was there carrying the $300 million keeping his company alive. I used to think being patient made me strong, but patience becomes a prison when your own family keeps using it against you. That day in the boardroom, I wasn't just rejected by my brother. I finally saw how many people were comfortable watching me disappear. Before we begin, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Because by the end of this story, you may ask yourself one question. How much can one handshake really cost? I had practiced that handshake in my mind for 20 years, but when my brother finally looked at my hand, he looked at it like it was something dirty. The elevator opened on the 34th floor of Callaway Industrial Tower, and I stepped out with my coat over one arm and my father's watch tucked beneath my cuff. Chicago looked gray through the glass walls, the kind of gray November carries when the lake wind has teeth. I was not there to fight. I kept telling myself that. In my left hand, I carried a dark leather folder holding the final documents for a $300 million anchor investment. That money would let Callaway Industries expand into 3 new states, protect 2,000 jobs, and give my brother the largest growth year the company had seen since our father was alive. But the money was not why I came. I came because Blaine Mercer Callaway was my older brother. Half-brother, if you asked him on a bad day. My brother, if you asked our father. The receptionist outside the boardroom glanced at me and said, "Delivery?" I looked at her name tag, then at the polished double doors behind her. "No, ma'am, Alonzo Callaway. I'm expected." Her face changed a little, not enough to be an apology. She checked her tablet, then handed me a visitor badge. Guest, not investor, not family, just guest. I looked at it for half a second and clipped it to my jacket. Some insults come dressed like office procedure. Inside the boardroom, 12 people turned their heads. Corwin Delaney, the CFO, looked down so quickly I knew he already understood the mistake. Marlon Huxley, my father's old friend, sat near the far end of the table with his hands folded tight. Lavinia Cross had her pen ready above the meeting minutes. And at the head of the table stood Blaine. Navy suit, silver hair, same sharp jaw as our father, but none of his warmth. There was an empty chair near the door. Not beside the board, not near the screen. Near the door, where vendors sat when they were allowed to speak for 5 minutes and leave. I did not sit. I walked toward him. "Good morning, brother," I said. Then I offered my hand. For one small second, I let myself believe age had softened something in him. Maybe he would remember our father. Maybe he would remember the boy who used to follow him around the Joliet plant, asking questions about machines and payroll, and why men took off their caps when Dad walked through the floor. Blaine looked at my hand. Then he looked at my face. Then he glanced around the room, making sure everyone was watching. "People like you don't belong here," he said. The room went still. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. A quiet insult from a man with power can travel farther than a shout. I kept my hand there a moment longer. "Blaine," I said carefully, "I came here because Corwin requested this meeting." He gave a small laugh, the kind people use when they want others to join in, but no one is brave enough to decide first. "I don't care who requested it. I don't shake hands with filthy trash." Lavinia's pen stopped moving. Marlon shifted as if he might stand, then stayed seated. Corwin stared at the polished table like it might open and spare him the moment. Nobody said a word. That was the part that settled deepest in me. Not Blaine's insult. I had heard versions of that from him before. It was the silence. Educated people, well-paid people, people who knew exactly what was happening and still chose the comfort of their chairs. I lowered my hand, slowly. I opened the leather folder and placed it on the table. If you'll allow me 5 minutes, the capital structure is simple. Blaine touched the folder with one finger and slid it away from him. That's enough, he said. We have serious business today. I'm not entertaining family guilt or charity theater in my boardroom. My boardroom. Our father's portrait hung behind him. I looked at that photograph. Sterling Calloway had built this company with worn hands, borrowed equipment, and a belief that a man's word should weigh more than his title. He had once told me, "Alonzo, respect is the cheapest thing you can give and the most expensive thing to lose." I heard the faint tick of his watch under my sleeve. Blaine folded his arms. "You can leave now." I looked around the table one last time. Marlon's eyes were wet, but he said nothing. Corwin's mouth opened, then closed. Lavinia looked ashamed, and somehow that made it worse. They had not just watched my brother insult me, they had approved it with silence. So I closed the folder. No speech. No threat. No, you'll regret this. Men like Blaine expect anger because anger lets them call you unstable. I had learned a long time ago not to hand my dignity to someone who was already trying to take it. I turned toward the door. Behind me, Blaine said, "Next time, make sure he checks in downstairs like everyone else." I stopped with my hand on the handle. Not long enough to give him satisfaction, just long enough to let the room feel the weight of what had happened. Then I said, "I understand." And I did. I understood that my brother had not refused a handshake. He had refused the last chance our father's family was ever going to get. What Blaine did not know was that I had not come to that room as his little brother begging for respect. I had come as the man holding the future of his company in my hands. I stepped into the elevator without looking back because I already knew the hardest part was not losing the meeting. It was accepting that my brother had never truly seen me. The doors closed, and the boardroom disappeared behind brushed steel. For a few seconds, all I heard was the elevator moving down through the tower and the small, steady tick of my father's watch under my sleeve. People think betrayal arrives like a thunderclap. It usually doesn't. Most of the time, it comes in little pieces. A chair placed away from the table, a name left off a program, a smile that fades when you walk in, a brother who introduces you as Sterling's younger son instead of my brother. Blaine had been doing that since we were kids. He was 8 years older, tall, bright, and white like his mother, Darlene. I was the youngest, my father's son from his first marriage, a black boy brought into a house where people smiled politely and watched how much space I took up. At family dinners in Evanston, Blaine was always the future of Calloway. If he won a debate trophy, the room stopped. If I brought home an award, someone would say, "That's nice, Alonzo," and then ask Blaine about football or college or whatever door had opened for him that week. I learned early not to compete for attention. I just worked. By the time I was 30, I had built my own investment firm without using my father's company as a ladder. I took smaller meetings, harder deals, slower growth. I wanted my name to mean something because I earned it, not because it sat beside Calloway. Most people at that board table had no idea how large Calloway Capital had become. Blaine never asked. That was his habit. If something did not flatter him, it did not interest him. The elevator reached the lobby, and I walked past the front desk. The same receptionist who had called me delivery looked up, then quickly looked away. I did not stop. There are moments when correcting someone only gives them a chance to pretend they misunderstood. Outside, the November air hit my face. Traffic moved along Wacker like nothing important had happened 34 floors above. Buses groaned. A man in a Cubs cap cursed softly at a taxi. The city kept its rhythm. I stood near the curb and looked back at the tower. That building had my father's name carved into the stone, but inside there was a wall called Founding Leadership. Sterling Calloway, Blaine Mercer Calloway. Photos of board chairs, presidents, partners. Not one photo of me. Not one line about the year I quietly helped refinance the Joliet plant. Not one mention of the bridge loan I arranged when payroll almost missed. Not one word about the clients I sent their way when Blaine's expansion plan went sideways. I never asked to be put on that wall, but walking past it all those years had taught me something painful. A family can erase you while still using what you give them. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. For a moment, I thought it might be Corwin, maybe Marlon, maybe someone from that room had found enough spine to say, "Alonzo, that was wrong." No message came, just a market alert. I almost laughed. The only thing honest enough to respond quickly was the stock market. I opened my contacts and called Destry Rowan, my managing partner. He answered on the second ring. "Alonzo?" He heard it in my silence. That was the thing about Destry, he did not need a speech. I looked one last time at the glass doors. "Withdraw every commitment tied to Callaway Industries," I said. A pause. "All of it?" "All of it." He did not ask what Blaine had done. He did not ask whether I was sure. We had worked together long enough for him to know I never moved money out of anger. "I'll begin the notices," he said. "Formal letters by close of business." "Keep it clean," I told him. "Governance concerns, no personal language." "Understood." I ended the call and stood there with the folder still in my hand. $300 million, unread. $300 million my brother had pushed aside with one finger because he could not see past my skin, my silence, or the old story he had written about me. My father gave me his watch in the Joliet warehouse when I was 22. The night shift had just ended, and the place smelled like machine oil and coffee. He placed it in my palm and said, "Never confuse recognition with value, son. Some people won't see you until losing you cost them something." Back then, I thought he was warning me about the world. I did not know he was preparing me for my own family. I slipped the phone back into my coat and started walking toward the river. Behind me, 34 floors up, Blaine probably believed he had put me in my place. By the following Monday morning, he would learn that the place he had assigned me was the same place holding up his entire company. 7 days passed without a call from Blaine. Not one. No apology. No message through Corwin. Not even the kind of stiff, corporate email families send when they want to sound polite without taking responsibility. That told me everything I needed to know. On Monday morning, I was in my office before 8, watching the Chicago River move under a pale sky. Destry Rowan stood across from my desk with a tablet in his hand and the expression of a man who had already sent a letter he knew would shake a building. "It went out at 7:15, he said. I nodded. "Clean language?" "Very clean. Governance standards. Loss of confidence. Final decision." "Good." I did not want revenge written into that letter. Revenge gives people something to argue with. Standards do not. Across town, Corwin Delaney opened that email inside Callaway Industrial Tower. I was not there, of course, but later I heard enough to picture it clearly. Corwin always arrived early. He liked quiet offices, fresh coffee, and spreadsheets that behaved the way people rarely did. The letter was short. Callaway Capital was withdrawing its full $300 million anchor commitment from the expansion round. No accusations, no personal language, just one line that mattered. "Following recent developments, this investment no longer aligns with our firm's governance standards." Corwin understood at once. Blaine did not. He stormed into the finance office 20 minutes later, tie still loose, phone in his hand. "What is this supposed to mean?" he demanded. Corwin tried to keep his voice steady. "It means they're out." "They can't be out." "They can." The term sheet was non-binding. Blaine stared at him like the law had personally insulted him. "Then call him." "I already tried." "Call him again." Blaine, every call is being routed through Destry Rowan. That name landed in the room like a closed door. By noon, the second investor had paused its commitment. By 3, a lender requested updated liquidity reports. Before the close of business, one of the infrastructure clients asked whether Callaway Industries still had the financial capacity to honor its expansion schedule. Nothing exploded. That is not how companies bleed. They bleed through emails marked urgent, through postponed meetings, through people saying, "We just need more clarity before moving forward." Clarity. That polite little word people use when trust has already left. Destry came back into my office late that afternoon with another update. Redwood is stepping back. Franklin wants a board call. Lakeshore Bank is reviewing exposure. I looked at the report, then set it down. He studied me for a moment. "Do you regret it?" I leaned back in my chair. Outside, traffic crawled along the bridges, headlights already showing in the gray afternoon. "No," I said, "but I'm not celebrating." Destry nodded like he expected that. "I didn't destroy their future," I said. "I stopped financing a room that decided dignity was optional." That was the line I had to keep clear in my own mind, because Blaine would not. Men like my brother are experts at changing the question. If you call out disrespect, they call it drama. If you draw a boundary, they call it betrayal. If you leave, they say you abandon them. By Wednesday, Blaine was telling people the market had shifted. By Thursday, he blamed lender anxiety. By Friday, according to Corwin, he blamed the finance team for not maintaining investor confidence. Not once did he say, "Maybe I should not have humiliated the lead investor in front of the board." That would have required honesty, and honesty had never been Blaine's favorite room to stand in. But while Blaine was busy blaming everyone around him, Marlon Huxley started doing something dangerous. He started reading old board packets, capital reports, emergency financing notes from years earlier. Marlon had known my father longer than anyone in that building. He knew Sterling's handwriting, his habits, even the way he hid worry behind practical instructions. Late Friday afternoon, Marlon found the first thread. A rescue loan from 12 years earlier, arranged through a holding company out of Indianapolis. Another bridge facility during a supplier crisis. A private investor group that had stepped in when Blaine's Ohio expansion nearly collapsed. Different names, different structures, same quiet source. Callaway Capital. Me. Marlon called my office at 6:10. Destry answered first, then transferred him after asking if I wanted to take it. I did. For a few seconds, Marlon said nothing. Then his voice came through, rougher than I remembered. "Alonzo," he said, "how long have you been protecting this company?" I looked toward the river. "Long enough, Marlon." He breathed out slowly. "Your father knew?" "He asked me not to make it public." "Why?" I closed my eyes for a moment. "Because he loved both his sons." That was the truth. Not the clean truth. Not the easy one, but the truth all the same. After we hung up, I did not go home right away. I drove north through evening traffic, past neighborhoods where porch lights had already come on, until I reached the cemetery where my father was buried. The grass was damp. The air smelled like wet leaves in stone. I stood in front of Sterling Callaway's grave with my hands in my coat pockets and the wind pressing against my back. "I tried," I said quietly. That was all. No speech, no tears for show, just 2 words I had carried too long. For years, I thought keeping peace meant absorbing pain. I thought silence was maturity. I thought being the younger brother meant making room, even when nobody made room for me. But standing there, listening to the faint tick of his watch, I finally understood something my father had tried to teach me. Respect is not a gift you beg for. It is a line you stop crossing for people who refuse to see it. The company was not collapsing because investors feared losing money. They were about to discover something far more dangerous had been lost. Trust. By the time the board started searching for answers, they were not looking for money anymore. Money has a paper trail. Trust does too, if you know where to look. 2 weeks after my withdrawal, Marlon Huxley asked permission to reopen my father's old executive office. I did not go with him. That room belonged to a part of my life I had already buried once, and I was not ready to stand under my father's portrait while other men discovered what he had tried so hard to keep quiet. Corwin called me later that afternoon. His voice sounded tired. "Alonzo," he said, "I think you should know what we found." I was at my desk, a stack of reports untouched beside my coffee. "Go ahead." He hesitated. "Your father kept everything." That sounded like Sterling Calloway. He had never trusted memory when paper could do the job. Marlon and Corwin had opened the cabinet behind my father's bookcase. Inside were old capital notes, letters, board memos, and folders labeled in my father's careful handwriting. Nothing was arranged to accuse anybody. That was not his style. He had simply preserved the truth in case the family ever forgot it. And we had. One folder covered the Joliet payroll crisis. Another held documents from the failed Ohio expansion. A third showed the private bridge financing that kept Callaway Industries from missing supplier payments after Blaine overextended the company. Different accounts, different dates, different firms, but every trail led back to Callaway Capital, back to me. Corwin exhaled into the phone. Half the board thought Blaine saved those years by restructuring operations. "He believed that too," I said. "You let him believe it." "I let my father decide what the family could survive." That was the honest answer. Dad knew Blaine's pride was brittle. He knew public embarrassment would make him crueler, not wiser. So when I stepped in, we did it quietly. No press release, no plaque, no speech at Christmas dinner. Just money moving where it needed to go. Just jobs protected. Just a younger son staying invisible because peace seemed worth the cost. Before ending the call, Corwin told me there was a sealed envelope addressed to Marlon. I did not ask what it said. I knew my father's voice well enough to feel it before I heard the words. Later, Marlon came to see me in person. He arrived at Callaway Capital just after 4, wearing the same overcoat he had worn to my father's funeral. He looked smaller than I remembered, not physically but morally, like a man carrying weight he should have picked up sooner. He placed a copy of the letter on my desk. "I should have spoken that day," he said. I did not answer right away. Some apologies need room to stand on their own. Finally, I looked down at the page. "If my sons ever forget they are brothers before they are businessmen, remind them that a company can survive losing money. A family rarely survives losing respect." I read it twice, then a third time. My father had not written it for court, not for leverage, not for drama. He had written it because he knew the kind of men his sons could become if nobody held a mirror in front of us. Marlon sat across from me. "I'm going to show this to Blaine." "You should. He may not listen." "I know. He may say we're all turning against him." That is usually what people say when accountability finally enters the room. Marlon nodded, but his eyes were heavy. That evening, he went to Blaine's office. Corwin later told me how it happened. Blaine was standing by the window, phone in hand, talking about replacement capital as if trust could be ordered like office furniture. Marlon closed the door. "Call your brother," he said. Blaine did not even turn around. "I'm not rewarding blackmail. This is not blackmail. This is consequence. I won't kneel because Alonzo got his feelings hurt." Marlon placed the letter on his desk. "Then apologize because he is your brother." Blaine laughed once, short, empty. "You always were soft when it came to him. Dad was too." There it was again, the same old story. If anyone treated me like family, Blaine called it weakness. By the next morning, the envelope was still unopened on his desk. Not misplaced, not forgotten, unopened. That small refusal told me more than any argument could have. A man who will not even read his dead father's warning is not lost. He is choosing the road. That afternoon, Corwin came to my office. He did not sit until I offered. He looked like someone who had slept badly and earned it. "Is there anything left to save?" he asked. I watched him for a moment. Corwin was not a cruel man. That almost made it harder. Cruel men announce themselves. Frightened men help cruelty survive by keeping their heads down. "There was," I said. He lowered his eyes. "But saving a company," I continued, is not the same as saving the culture that made this possible. He nodded slowly. I should have said something. Yes, I said. You should have. I did not soften it. He did not deserve comfort he had not earned yet. By Friday, Blaine held an internal leadership meeting and blamed outside instability, market overreaction, and personal agendas. Those are the kinds of phrases people use when the plain truth would cost too much. But the people in that room had started reading too. And once people begin comparing what they were told with what actually happened, control starts slipping quietly. I still believe my brother had one last chance to choose humility over pride. I was about to learn that some people do not recognize the edge of the cliff until they have already stepped beyond it. Sometimes the last chance does not arrive with a grand speech. Sometimes it comes as a quiet invitation wrapped in polite words, and you find out quickly whether someone wants reconciliation or simply wants their power back. 3 weeks after the board meeting, Corwin called me directly. I was reviewing a community lending proposal when my assistant stepped in and said, Corwin Delaney is on line 2. He says it's personal. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I thought of my father's letter, still sitting in the top drawer of my desk, and picked up. Alonzo, Corwin said, Blaine wants to meet. I said nothing. No lawyers, he added. No board, no press, just the two of you. That should have made me suspicious. It did. But some part of me, the part I had spent years trying to outgrow, wondered if my brother had finally reached the place where pride could no longer carry him. Where? I asked. Corwin gave me the name of a quiet restaurant along the river. Private dining room. Side entrance. The kind of place businessmen choose when they want no witnesses but still want the room to feel important. I agreed to meet at 6. At 5:30, I left my office, rode down to the lobby, and stepped into a black car waiting by the curb. Traffic was slow, so I had time to think. That was not always a gift. I watched people on the sidewalks heading home from work, collars up against the wind, and wondered how many families looked fine from the outside while quietly breaking behind closed doors. Blaine was already there when I arrived. He stood as I entered, which almost fooled me for a second. He wore a dark suit, no tie, and the tired look of a man who had not slept well, but still wanted control of the room. Alonzo, he said, not brother, just my name. I sat across from him. The waiter poured water and left us alone. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside the window, the river reflected the city lights in broken strips. I waited. Not because I wanted to punish him, because if a man asked for a private meeting after humiliating his own brother, the first honest words should belong to him. Blaine cleared his throat. We both know this situation has gotten out of hand. There it was. Not, I hurt you. Not, I was wrong. A situation. He talked for nearly 10 minutes. Market confidence, lender pressure, board optics, employee anxiety, expansion schedules. He used every word except apology. Finally, he leaned forward. We need to move past what happened. I looked at him carefully. What happened? His mouth tightened. You know what I mean. I'd like to hear you say it. He glanced toward the door as if dignity might walk in and embarrass him. Things were said. No, I said quietly. You said them. His jaw hardened. Are we really going to sit here and relitigate a heated moment? I almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because I had heard that sentence before. People say heated moment when they want the wound to sound accidental. I asked him one question. If that investment had stayed in place, would you have called me tonight? He looked down at his water glass. That silence answered better than he ever could. I pushed my chair back slowly. You don't miss your brother, Blaine. You miss the money. His eyes lifted. That's unfair. No, it's accurate. Then his mask slipped. You always do this, he said. You stand there calm, like you're better than everyone else. I stood there calm because the room was watching. You wanted this. You wanted me cornered. I wanted you to shake my hand. For the first time, he had nothing ready. I left a few minutes later. Not dramatically. No slam door, no raised voice. I walked out through the side entrance and stood under the awning while my driver circled back. On the ride to my office, I found myself reaching for the old habit. Maybe I should give him one more chance. Maybe saving the company would protect the workers. Maybe pride had wounded both of us enough. By the time I returned to Callaway Capital, the office was mostly empty. Destry was still there, waiting near my door with a folder in his hand. "You need to see this," he said. Inside was a forwarded memo from an executive at Callaway Industries. It had gone out less than 30 minutes after Blaine left the restaurant. Legal strategy options for compelling renewed negotiations with Callaway Capital. Public pressure recommendations. Reputation leverage. My brother had prepared his next attack before he ever sat across from me. The dinner was not an olive branch. It was bait. I stood by my desk for a long while, holding my father's watch in my palm. The metal was warm from my wrist. Dad once told me, "Character shows up when nobody can make you do the right thing." That night, I understood the other side of that lesson. Character also shows up when someone thinks they can still get what they want without doing the right thing. I fastened the watch again and closed the folder. I stopped waiting for an apology. Not because I stopped loving my brother, because love cannot keep living in a room where respect is always the first thing thrown out. The next morning, Blaine made one final move to destroy my credibility. He had no idea he was about to destroy his own. By sunrise, my phone looked like a wall of alarms. Messages stacked over missed calls, news alerts, emails from partners, a text from Destry that said only, "Call me before you respond to anyone." I had not even poured coffee yet. The headline sat at the top of my screen like it had been waiting all night. Family feud or corporate sabotage. Sources say Callaway investor pulled funding to seize control. I read it once at my kitchen counter, then again in the car on the way downtown. By the time I reached my office, cable business shows were already repeating pieces of it. They did not know me, but they had no trouble filling in the blanks. Ruthless investor, bitter brother, power grab. That is how quickly a lie grows when people prefer a clean villain. My communications director, Evelyn Price, was waiting outside my office with 2 associates and a folder full of printed headlines. "We need a statement before noon," she said. Destry stood near the window, arms folded. "Or we let them burn themselves out." Evelyn shook her head. "Silence looks like guilt." I took off my coat and placed it over the chair. "Sometimes noise looks like panic." She softened her voice. "Alonzo, they're shaping the story without you." "I know. And if the public decides you did this for revenge, the facts may not matter later." That sentence stayed with me, because she was not wrong. By late morning, 2 charity boards had asked to pause public collaboration until things became clearer. A university entrepreneurship program postponed my keynote. No one accused me outright. They used careful language, review, clarity, temporary distance, professional words, personal consequences. Around 2, Jordan Ellis knocked on my door. He was one of our younger analysts, sharp, cautious, always over-prepared. I expected a market update. Instead, he stood there holding his laptop like he had walked into the wrong room. "Come in, Jordan." He stepped inside. "Sir, I know this may not be my place. That usually means it matters. Say it." He looked at the floor, then forced himself to meet my eyes. "My grandfather watched your father build Callaway Industries from the plant floor. He used to say Mr. Sterling treated men like men, not like payroll lines." I sat back. Jordan continued, slower now. "When I saw those headlines, I thought about how fast they changed you from a businessman into a threat, like they were waiting for the chance." I knew exactly what he meant. Then he said, "If someone like you lets them write the ending, people like me will learn the wrong lesson. Will think staying quiet is the only way to survive." That hit harder than any headline. I had been thinking like a wounded brother. Jordan reminded me there were younger men watching who had never been invited into rooms without proving twice as much. After he left, Thaddeus Keene arrived with 2 sealed document boxes. He was not a man who wasted steps. Gray suit, old leather briefcase, the steady patience of a lawyer who had seen powerful families lie to themselves for decades. He set the boxes on my conference table. Board minutes, he said, investment records, internal correspondence, Sterling's letter, witness summaries. If you release this, Blaine's narrative collapses by dinner. Evelyn, still in the room, looked relieved. Then we release it. I opened the first folder. There it was, the visitor badge report, Lavinia's notes, emails proving Corwin had requested my presence as lead investor, the timeline of the withdrawal, clean, exact, devastating. I closed it. Not yet. Evelyn stared at me. Alonzo, if we fight this in public, Blaine gets to turn the truth into a family circus. He'll say we're airing grief for leverage. Thaddeus watched me carefully. Then where? The boardroom. That evening, Blaine went on television. I watched from my office with the lights low and the city shining behind the glass. He looked composed. Expensive tie, measured tone, perfect expression of a man pretending pain had made him noble. This company has been shaken by personal betrayal, he told the interviewer. I will not allow one man's bitterness to threaten thousands of employees. One man's bitterness. He never said my name. He did not have to. My phone buzzed while the interview was still running. Marlon, I answered. His voice was quiet. I watched it. So did I. I should have stood up that day. I said nothing. This time the silence was his to carry. I'm not calling to speak for the board, he said. I'm calling for myself. I failed your father. I failed you. That apology did not repair the damage, but it was honest. Honest still counts. Then he added, there are people in that room ready to tell the truth now. I turned away from the screen. Who? Corwin? Lavinia? Quillan? Maybe 2 more if they stop worrying about their seats. Courage often starts late. That does not make it worthless. After we hung up, I stood alone for a while, listening to the muted television and the soft tick beneath my cuff. My brother had taken the lie public because he thought I would rush after it. But winning is not about speaking first. It is about choosing the place where truth can no longer be dodged. I called Thaddeus back into the room. Prepare everything, I said. Every document, every witness, every timeline. For court? Not yet. For media? No. He nodded once, already understanding. The emergency board meeting, I said, Friday morning. Blaine walked into that week believing he had turned the country against me. He had no idea the next room he entered would be the last one he ever controlled. When I stepped back into that boardroom Friday morning, nothing looked different. The same polished table, the same long windows, the same view of Chicago pretending the city below had no idea what men in expensive suits could ruin before lunch. But something had changed. Silence no longer belonged to Blaine. I entered without cameras, attorneys, or a line of assistants. Just a leather folder in my hand and my father's watch tucked beneath my cuff. A few directors nodded when I came in. Others looked down at their papers as if the grain of the table had suddenly become fascinating. The chair near the door was still there. I looked at it, then at the open seat near Marlon. This time, I sat at the table. Blaine stood at the head as usual. He wore confidence like a tailored coat, but it did not fit him the way it used to. His face was smooth, his voice controlled, his slides ready on the screen. Let's begin, he said. He spoke for 20 minutes. External pressure, market volatility, investor overreaction, recovery strategy. He showed charts, forecasts, lender timelines. He used the word stability so often it started sounding like a plea. Not once did he mention the meeting where he refused my hand. Not once did he mention why the lead investor walked out with $300 million still unsigned. He was trying to edit the past in front of people who had finally started remembering it. When he finished, Marlon slowly stood. Blaine looked annoyed. "Marlon, we have an agenda." "Yes," Marlon said, "and it is missing the truth." The room held still. Marlon turned toward me first, not the board. That mattered. "Alonzo, I failed you that day." My throat tightened, but I kept my face calm. He continued, "I saw what happened. I knew it was wrong. I had known your father too long to pretend otherwise, and I still sat there. That silence was mine. I own it." No speech could undo what had happened, but those words moved something in the room. Corwin stood next. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his glasses. "The official record should state that Mr. Alonzo Calloway was invited to that meeting as the prospective lead investor for the expansion round. Not as a guest, not as a family visitor, as the controlling anchor commitment." Blaine's jaw tightened. Corwin kept going. "The visitor badge issued to him was inaccurate. The seating arrangement was inappropriate, and the dismissal of his materials occurred before the investment proposal was even reviewed." Lavinia Cross placed a folder in front of the board chair. She did not stand, but her voice carried. "I have the meeting notes, calendar invitation, access log, and draft agenda. They support Mr. Delaney's statement." Blaine snapped. "So now we're pretending this is about a chair and a badge?" "No," Lavinia said. "We're establishing a pattern." That was the moment Blaine understood the room was not chasing his story anymore. Marlon opened a sealed envelope. I recognized the paper before he read a word. My father used thick cream stationery because he said thin paper made serious thoughts feel temporary. Marlon's voice softened. "Sterling wrote this years before he passed. He asked that it be used only if the family forgot what the company was supposed to stand for." Blaine leaned forward. "That has no place in a governance meeting." Quillen Pierce, the independent director, looked at him. "Character has a place in every governance meeting," Marlon read. "If my sons ever forget they are brothers before they are businessmen, remind them that respect is the first investment any family must protect." Nobody moved. For a moment, I felt my father in that room more strongly than I had in years. Not as a memory, as a standard. Blaine rose so fast his chair rolled back. "This is emotional manipulation," he said. "All of you are letting Alonzo turn a business issue into family theater." I looked at him then, really looked at him. He still believed volume could replace truth. He pointed toward me. He pulled funding. He leaked nothing because he wanted to look noble. He waited for the company to suffer so he could walk in here and take control. Thaddeus Keene, seated quietly along the wall, placed another packet on the table. No drama, no interruption, just paper. Lavinia handed copies around. Internal emails, the dinner memo, the legal strategy document prepared before Blaine's private invitation, the media outreach timeline. The article sources traced close enough to Calloway leadership that nobody needed a translation. Blaine's face changed color. I finally stood. Not to defend myself. The documents were doing that well enough. "I came here hoping to invest in a company my father built," I said. "I left realizing I could not invest where basic dignity required permission." No one interrupted. "I did not ask for a title. I did not ask for a wall plaque. I did not even ask for credit for the years my firm helped protect this company from mistakes I did not make." I turned slightly toward Blaine. "I asked for one thing any brother should have given freely." His eyes flicked down to my hands. A handshake. The board chair cleared his throat. "Leadership cannot be separated from conduct. Given the materials presented and the loss of investor confidence, I am calling an emergency vote regarding the chief executive position." Blaine looked around the room, searching for the old protection. Marlon did not look away. Corwin lowered his head, not in fear this time, but in shame. Lavinia held her pen ready. The first ballot was placed on the table. Only then did my brother look at me as if he was finally seeing the man he had spent a lifetime underestimating. As the ballots were counted, I understood neither of us would leave that room as the same man who entered it. Blaine knew it too. He stood near the head of the table with both hands flat against the polished wood, watching each director like he could still pull loyalty out of them by force. For most of his life, that had worked. A look from Blaine could end a question. A cold word could make people sit back down. Not that day. Before the final count was read, he raised his hand. "I want the record to show," he said, "that removing me under pressure from a bitter investor would reward corporate sabotage." Quillon Pierce paused with the ballots in front of him. Blaine took that pause as permission. He opened a folder and spread printed articles across the table. Headlines, market reactions, selected analyst notes. Every page had been chosen to make me look dangerous and him look like a man protecting workers from a personal grudge. "This company is under attack," he said, "and some of you are helping him do it." No one spoke. He turned toward me. "Tell them, Alonzo. Tell them you didn't enjoy watching this place suffer." The old me might have answered. The younger me, the one who still wanted his brother to understand him, might have tried to explain the difference between revenge and consequence. I stayed seated. Thaddeus Keene stood instead. He placed a sealed packet in front of Quillon. "These materials were submitted to the Independent Governance Committee yesterday evening," he said. "They include complete investment timelines, correspondence, witness statements, and financial records covering 12 years of support from Callaway Capital and its related entities." Blaine's expression sharpened. "That is privileged family material." "No," Quillon said, opening the packet. "It is corporate record." The room changed after that. Not loudly, not dramatically, just page by page. Documents showed where my firm had stepped in when lenders hesitated. Emails showed my father requesting discretion to protect both sons. Memos showed Blaine's failed decisions quietly stabilized by capital he never bothered to trace. And the dinner strategy document showed he had sought leverage while pretending to seek peace. Facts do not need anger. That is what makes them dangerous. When Quillon finished reviewing the summary, he removed his glasses and set them down. "The vote will proceed." This time, Blaine did not object. Maybe he had run out of words. Maybe he finally understood that every new sentence only dug the hole deeper. The ballots were counted one by one. I listened to the quiet scrape of paper, the soft click of a pen, the hum of the air system above us. Strange what a man notices when a family name is being split open in public. Then Quillon read the decision. By majority vote, the board removes Blaine Mercer Callaway as Chief Executive Officer of Callaway Industries, effective immediately. No one clapped. No one smiled. That mattered to me. A decent room does not cheer when a family breaks, even if the decision is necessary. Blaine stared at the table. For a moment, I saw not the CEO, not the man who had insulted me, but the older brother who once ran ahead of me through our father's plant, telling me to keep up. Then his face hardened again, as if tenderness were an enemy he could still defeat. Security came in quietly, professional, respectful. Blaine gathered his phone, his keys, and the framed photo of our father that had sat in his office for years. The company award on his shelf was packed into a box by an assistant who kept her eyes lowered. I walked behind the group at a distance. Not to watch him suffer. I had no appetite for that. I walked because our father had taught us that even hard endings should be handled with dignity. Employees along the hallway stepped aside. Some looked shocked. Some looked relieved. Nobody mocked him. Nobody whispered loudly enough to be heard. Near the lobby, Blaine stopped. The revolving doors turned slowly ahead of us. Beyond the glass, Chicago moved on, careless and cold. He turned toward me. For once, there was no board watching, no camera waiting, no microphone inviting him to perform. Just my brother, holding a cardboard box, looking smaller than his title had ever allowed him to look. His shoulders lowered. "Alonzo," he said. I waited. He looked down at the box, then back at me. I should have listened. It was not a full apology, not yet, maybe not ever, but it was the closest thing to humility I had heard from him in years. Then he did something I did not expect. He extended his hand, slowly, the same hand that had refused mine weeks earlier. For a few seconds, all I could see was that boardroom again, my hand hanging between us, his eyes moving from my skin to the room, Marlon frozen, Corwin silent, Lavinia's pen suspended above the page. A handshake can look small to people who have never been denied one. To me, it carried 20 years. I looked at Blaine's hand, then I looked at his face. I did not hate him. That truth surprised me most. I hated what he had done. I hated what he had cost our family. I hated how long I had waited for him to become the brother our father believed he could be. But I did not hate him. I simply could not give him the comfort of a gesture he had only learned to value after losing power. So I kept my hands at my sides. "I truly hope you find peace, Blaine," I said. His hands stayed there a moment, then fell. I gave him a respectful nod and walked past him. Not as punishment, as closure. Outside, the air hit my face, sharp and clean. I buttoned my coat and stood on the sidewalk while traffic rolled through the city. Behind me, the revolving doors whispered shut. For weeks, I had thought this story was about saving a company. It was not. It was about saving the part of myself that kept asking people to treat me like I belonged. Months later, I would discover that losing my brother's respect had never been the end of my story. It became the beginning of someone else's hope. 8 months passed before I understood that peace is not something you win. It is something you choose, sometimes before breakfast, sometimes while reading an old message, sometimes while driving past a building that once made you feel invisible. Callaway Industries survived. Barely, at first. The board brought in new leadership, repaired lender relationships, and kept most of the workers employed. I was glad for that. Whatever Blaine had done, the people on the plant floor had mortgages, grandchildren, prescriptions, and college bills. They did not deserve to pay forever for one man's pride. I did not return as CEO. Some people thought I would. A few even told me, "This is your chance to take what should have been yours." But I had spent too much of my life trying to earn a seat at tables that never truly wanted me. I was done mistaking proximity for belonging. So I built a new table. The Callaway Leadership Institute opened in early autumn inside a renovated brick building on the south side. It was not flashy, no marble lobby, no wall of donors trying to outshine one another, just classrooms, workspaces, coffee that was stronger than it needed to be, and young founders who came in carrying ideas nobody in their family knew how to support yet. The first morning, Jordan Ellis stood near the front desk, helping a woman from Englewood prepare her pitch for a small manufacturing loan. I watched him listen to her. Really listen. That moved me more than any headline ever could. He had once told me that if I let other people write the ending, younger men like him would learn the wrong lesson. Now he was teaching them a better one without needing to say it. Courage spreads quietly when someone finally refuses to shrink. During the opening ceremony, I removed my father's watch. It felt strange to unfasten it. That watch had sat against my wrist through boardrooms, funerals, bad deals, good years, and lonely nights when I wondered if strength was just another word for swallowing pain. I placed it inside a glass case near the entrance. Beneath it, a small plaque read, "Character outlasts power." Most visitors would never know the whole story. They would not know about the handshake, the badge that said guest, the folder Blaine pushed aside, or the letter my father left behind. They did not need every wound. They only needed the lesson. A few weeks after the opening, someone told me Blaine had moved out of Illinois. He was living quietly in a small town, no corporate boards, no interviews, no magazine profiles. His name still appeared in old articles, but not in new ones. A friend asked me over lunch, "Does that give you satisfaction?" I looked out the restaurant window before answering. No, I said. Justice and satisfaction are not the same thing. That was the truth. I never wanted Blaine destroyed. I wanted him to understand. Whether he ever would, I could not control. That was the hardest freedom to accept. You can build a case, you can prove a lie, you can walk away with your dignity intact, but you cannot make another person become honest before they are ready. On a quiet Sunday, I drove to my father's grave. The trees had begun turning gold, and dry leaves moved across the path in small circles. I stood there with my hands in my coat pockets. No folder, no argument, no question I needed answered. The company made it, I told him. The family didn't, not the way you hoped. I looked down at the grass. But your values did. For once, that felt like enough. When I left, I did not turn around. Not because I loved him less, but because grief had finally stopped asking me to stay. Looking back now, I know the most painful moment was not my brother refusing my hand. It was realizing how much of my life I had spent waiting for him to confirm what my father had already taught me. My worth was never up for a vote, not in a boardroom, not at a family table, not in the mouth of a man who only recognized value after losing access to it. If you have ever walked into a room where someone decided you did not belong before you even spoke, I hope you remember this. Do not confuse another person's blindness with your own absence of value. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave a place that keeps charging you for basic respect, then spend the rest of your life building somewhere better. And if you have ever had to walk away from someone you still loved because staying meant losing yourself, I would like to hear your story. Stories like yours remind people that they are not alone. My brother thought refusing my handshake would end my place in his world. He never realized it was the moment I finally began building my own.